The annual Dr. Martin Luther King Memorial Scholarship Program serves multiple purposes. Number one, honoring Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy. Number two, raising funds for college scholarships. And number three, recognizing outstanding individuals and organizations that have demonstrated Dr. King's actions against racism, poverty, and efforts to promote social justice and peace. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was initiated into the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity June 22nd, 1952 at the Sigma chapter while a graduate student at Boston University. The fraternity was instrumental in the creation and funding of the Martin Luther King Jr. National Memorial in Washington, D.C. Brother Dr. King is best known for his significant role in the advancement of the American Civil Rights Movement using nonviolent civil disobedience. Although the movement cannot be attributed to any one individual or organization, Brother Dr. King served as a beacon of hope, and his famous "I Have a Dream" speech has become an immortal call to action against social injustice. Each year, we select a theme related to social justice and a few key quotes from Dr. King. We then convene a panel to discuss relevant issues and propose solutions and action plans. Our theme this year is equity, diversity, and opportunity. If not now, when? We will be considering the underlying issues of social justice and the following Dr. King quotes. First, history will have to record that the greatest tragedy of this period of social transition was not the strident clamor of the bad people, but the appalling silence of the good people. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. He who passively accepts evil is as much involved in it as he who helps to perpetuate it. He who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it. The second quote is, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." At this time, I want to thank and to introduce our panel. First, Brother Dr. Yancy Freeman Sr. is a three-time graduate of the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, earning a bachelor's degree in 1992, a master's degree in 1998, and doctorate in leadership and learning in 2018. He currently serves as the Vice Chancellor for Enrollment, Management, and Student Affairs at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. He has worked at UTC for the past 26 years to provide access and opportunity to help students to meet their educational goals. He has been married to Raphael Freeman for 25 years, and they have two children, Yancy Jr. and Camille. Yancy Jr. is 23, Camille is 16. Dr. Freeman was a 1988 initiate into Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, the Eta Phi chapter, seated at UTC. Dr. Freeman serves as a trustee at New Horizon Church and on the board of Public Education Foundation and the River City Company. Thank you, Dr. Freeman. Our next panelist is Brother Dr. Jeffrey T. Wilson. He's the pastor of New United Baptist Church. He is a native of Chattanooga, a graduate of Brainerd High School and the University of Memphis. He holds a doctorate degree in ministry from the United Theological Seminary. Dr. Wilson has been active on several boards and committees, including the Hamilton County School Board, and currently serving as a trustee at Memorial Hospital and as vice moderator for the Chattanooga Baptist and Missionary Association. Dr. Wilson has been the recipient of numerous awards and recognitions, including being inducted into the Morehouse College of Pastoral Leadership. He is a member of several organizations and professional groups, including the Psi Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Dr. Wilson is married to Dr. Yolanda Wilson, and they are the proud parents of one child, Thomas Jeremiah Wilson. Thank you, Brother Wilson. Our next panelist is Ms. Stacy Lightfoot. Ms. Lightfoot joined the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga in 2021 as the institution's first Vice Chancellor for Diversity and Engagement. In this role, she serves as a catalyst to foster a more inclusive campus community and provide strategic leadership for diversity and inclusion initiatives. Prior to UTC, she was the Executive Vice President at the Public Education Foundation, where she worked for 12 years facilitating partnerships with regional and national constituencies to achieve parity in student educational outcomes. In 2015, Ms. Lightfoot testified before the U.S. Senate regarding what families needed to know to make informed decisions about college. In 2017, she was invited back to DC to speak to congressional staff about simplifying the federal financial aid form. She has received numerous awards throughout her 22-year career in college access and success, including the 2016 National Excellence in Education Award. Previous recipients included former First Lady Michelle Obama and Dr. Ben Carson. Ms. Lightfoot participated in Leadership Chattanooga in 2019 and Harvard Business School's Young American Leadership Program in 2017. She earned a bachelor's degree in communications from DePaul University and a master's degree in international services from the University of Roehampton in London, England. Thank you, Ms. Lightfoot. And last, we have Ms. Karitsa Mosley Jones, who's a native of Chattanooga. She received a bachelor's degree in sociology and criminal justice and a master's degree in social work from Alabama A&M University. As a licensed master social worker, she has over 12 years of experience, which provides her an extensive understanding of the social economic barriers that many are facing in her immediate community. In 2014, Ms. Jones was elected to the Hamilton County School Board. At the age of 33, she was the youngest member ever elected to the board and the first African-American female to represent her district's community. In her first term, she has been a strong advocate for greater community engagement in schools, closing achievement gaps, more equitable and transparent budgeting decisions, and fought for fair and balanced educational experiences to improve the urban schools in her district. She is now serving her second term on the board as District 5 representative. In August 2021, Ms. Jones was appointed by Mayor Tim Kelly to lead the city of Chattanooga's newly created Community Forward Schools Partnership as its program director. Ms. Jones was a member of the 2015 inaugural class of the Harvard Business School's Young American Leaders Program. She is a proud member of the Mount Canaan Baptist Church and Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. She serves on the board of Girls Inc. of Chattanooga. Of all the titles she holds in her life, Ms. Jones is most proud to be a devoted wife, mother, and daughter. She is married to the love of her life, Mr. William E. Jones, the proud mother of 4 assets, William E. J., Whitney, Wesley, and Shambiria. Let's hope I didn't murder that name. Again, I want to thank each one of you for joining us today and sharing your expertise and to challenge the issues of social justice. We'll now get into the meat of our program. The National Association of Social Workers defines social justice as, quote, the view that everybody deserves equal opportunity, equal economic, political, and social rights and opportunities, end quote. To study social justice is to learn about the problems that dramatically impact the quality of life for certain populations and how people have worked to solve these problems. One source lists the top 10 most pressing issues facing 21st century African Americans, and not necessarily in order of prevalence, as mass incarceration, gang violence, poverty, drugs, voting rights, education, single-parent households, unemployment, police brutality, and systemic racism. So we will start with the global question: what is your reaction to the theme related and the related quotes? We'll allow each panelist to respond without comment or rebuttal, and then we'll get into another series of questions. So why don't we go in reverse order of the introductions, and we'll start with you, Ms. Jones, and let you give your response to the theme itself and the related quotes.
So first of all, thank you to Alpha Phi Alpha for this opportunity. I am excited to be here today. And I'm excited because this topic or these topics are the root of my passion. And so I will say that as it relates to the theme, equity, diversity, and opportunity, if not now when, is the perfect theme for this Martin Luther King Jr. birthday celebration this year because of the state of and the climate of our society at this time, and especially here in Chattanooga. And so when I was looking over what you all shared with us about the background for the theme, the quotes that you shared with us today, as a social worker, I'm really excited about what NASW has to say about social justice and what it looks like in the definition of that, because I believe that wholeheartedly. And so I will say that what I know about the theme today and what we're going to talk about is that of all the issues that they say that we face here in the 21st century as African Americans, I think the initial thought that comes to mind to me is that, yes, we face all of these issues, but all of these issues stem back to one thing that I advocate for a lot, and that is the access to upward mobility. I think we all know that things such as you hear, I grew up hearing the term, poverty begets crime, lack of education, all of this stuff is residual effects of not having access to upward mobility. If you have that access, then you're able to do so much more, and you're able to be a productive part of society. So that is what I think about the theme today. And I'm looking forward to the conversation with my peers here on the panel.
Okay, thank you. And next we'll go to Ms. Lightfoot.
Greetings and good morning. And again, I echo Mrs. Jones' sentiments and gratitude for hosting this event and really shining light on the legacy of Dr. King, and I'm honored to be here. Something that resonates with me about, I'll say a snippet of one of the quotes by Dr. King. He says, "He who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it." So he who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it. And I think that is such a, that quote resonates with me, especially after what we've experienced the last 2, 3, 4 years with the racial dissension and the political polarization that we've seen, and what it means and the responsibility that we must take to really shed light and voice on the ills and ails of this, of our society, and especially people of color. But he said this quote in April of 1969, and it's one of his least well-known speeches. He did this speech in Manhattan, denouncing the war in Vietnam, and he says, "Silence in the face of the horrors of that war amount to betrayal." And so what resonates with me and what strikes me about what you all are doing and how you are shining light to the diversity, equity, and inclusion space is really important. I think what this means for us is that we are tired of, first of all, so many of us have been in the fight and have really expressed our thoughts and opinions. I know by the roles that we hold in this community, but how many more people need, and we'd like to join us to continue to not be silent, so that more people in this community move forward and have upward economic mobility and better access to health and better access to education and home ownership and all of these things that are really effects of systemic racism. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to join the discussion, and look forward to joining voices with the fine folks on this panel.
Okay, thank you. And next we'll go to Brother Wilson.
Well, and again, good morning, and thank you, Brother Walker, and to our fraternity for hosting this event. When I think about the quote and all of Dr. King's quotes, and I look at the climate that we're in today, I always wonder where we are in terms of that legacy. The last last 5, 6 years, are we moving forward? Are we moving backward? And I think that we are at a crossroad. You know, King talks about the urgency of now, and the emphasis is on the word now. And we are at a crossroad. You know, we talk about so many of the other challenges in terms of education and home mobility. This COVID has exposed, it has not created, it has exposed inequity in a way that I hope that some of my other peers those in position of leadership would understand it. We are dying in rapid numbers, you know, and that kind of thing. And we're at a place where now, not only is there a need to speak out, but there's also a need to speak loudly. You know, I'm reminded of the late pastor, the Reverend Dr. William Augustus Jones. He was quoted as saying, "Never bring a flute when a trumpet is needed." And we need a trumpet. We need a loud voice that is unapologetic, not afraid to sometimes be controversial, and just be willing to speak to the issues in a way that if it is offensive to some, then, you know, we have to continue. But I think the time now for this sort of, you know, let's just kind of just hope things get better. They're not getting better. We you know, 2008, you know, all of us celebrated on election night of Barack Obama, and the world was changing, and there was a new day dawning. And here we are now, years later, 10, 12, 13, whatever years later, and we're going backwards. And so I just think that whenever I think about Martin Luther King Day, Martin Luther King quote, and look at where we are now in this current climate, we don't need a flute. We need a trumpet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll go to Brother Freeman.
Thank you, Brother Walker. Good morning to everyone. And I will just reiterate what all of the illustrious panelists have said. I am thrilled to be here with you this morning, and will say that I am in awe of the talent and nature of the folks who are on this panel this morning. They are some of my favorite people, and so it is great to be here with them as we talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and equity, diversity, and opportunity, if not now, when. Most of you know that I've been working in higher ed for a number of years, and I will say to you that if you've not had a chance to work with young folks, you are missing the time of your life, because although it is absolutely rewarding, they will also challenge you. I know I can get an amen from the panelists who are on here. They will definitely challenge you in ways that you've never dreamed before. And so I love the work that I do. I love the opportunity to stand in the gap and to represent and to teach them about what it means to represent for our community. And so I am so thankful to be here. My favorite quote is one that you included, Brother Walker, in reading, and it is about the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in a moment of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. It is the way that I live my life. It is, I am, and we had the video clip at the very beginning, and as Brother Wilson said, gosh, it really does make you think how much has changed since that day. How far have we really gotten since Dr. King was here, and the struggle and the complexity of the struggle for what he and other civil rights leaders dealt with. And so I challenge you to say that today is the day. Never have I felt like this is the prime opportunity for us to do what is right, do what is necessary, do what is needed to advance opportunity and access, diversity, equity for our community. So I am looking forward to talking with everyone today. And thank you, Brother Bo.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Just want to reiterate some of the themes that I picked up from each panelist. And, when we get into further discussion, we basically want to look at what do you see as the most prevalent issues related to social justice and why, and what are some obstacles and what are some viable solutions. That's overall what we're looking for. The common themes I heard, Ms. Jones talked about access to upward mobility. Ms. Lightfoot talked about basically silence is betrayal, in reference to access to education, home ownership, which gets into the economic issues. Our brother Wilson talked about reassessing where we are and said we're at a crossroads, and that the COVID exposed inequity, it didn't cause it. And I think he made an excellent point that we need an unapologetic loud voice. And that's what Dr. King was. We need a trumpet instead of a flute. And then Brother Freeman talks about we need to do what's right now. And so as we think about those themes and the issues that we are facing, what do you see as the responsibility of individuals regarding issues of social justice? And as I think about that, we sometimes think we need a large army to get something accomplished. And as some of you might know, I grew up in Selma, Alabama, and one of the most prominent social civil rights issues is the march from Selma to Montgomery and the infamous Bloody Sunday that happened on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. What a lot of people don't realize is that the Selma to Montgomery march that resulted in the 1965 Voters' Rights Act was started by 8 people in Selma that wanted to be that trumpet instead of a flute. And so what started with 8 people, they were called the Courageous 8. The leader was my 7th grade math teacher, Dr. Frederick Douglass Reese. And if you think about what 8 people started and the result of that, individuals need to be more responsible. So what do you see as the responsibility of individuals regarding the issue of social justice?
I'll start.
You have an opportunity to go, so we'll let you go in order of your preference.
I'll start, and I'm not going to say anything profound. It's really just a blink reaction to what you just said, and it is around this. The thought that kind of keeps percolating in my mind right now is like the elephant is so big for us to eat that no one wants to take a bite. But when we identify what the elephant is, and we understand like the tools that we need to all kind of take bites of the elephant at different places and at different times, it becomes a lot more palatable to approach or address a challenge in a situation. I mean, when you think about all the ills that we're facing right now in terms of the effects of systemic racism and how it is continuing to disparage and disenfranchise so many communities and Black and brown communities, it's like, what am I supposed to do? And I think looking at this panel and the role that Ms. Jones, Mosley Jones have taken and Dr. Wilson have taken to be on the school board, like that role, although sometimes it's lonely, right? Sometimes it's lonely. That is the responsibility that Mrs. Mosley Jones has taken to take a bite of this elephant. And whether it's a pastor and Yancy who's been in education for over 20 years, like we all figure out what our talents and our skills are, and we use that talent and that skill to change the world. And when I look at this panel, that's exactly what we're doing. What I would like to see is how we join forces and do it better together, right? And leveraging each other's talents and skills and passions to really focus on what the elephant is, so we all know how to take bites of it. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I got. Nothing profound, but, it is, I think so many people get overwhelmed when they start thinking about all of the issues and the challenges. But it's like, how do you use your God-given talents? How do you use the assets that you have to solve problems in ways that only you can solve? And I think that's, looking at this panel, that's what we've all done with what God has given us, the gifts that God has given us. Now we just need to continue to find people to join that army and place each other on the field, at the right time and in the right, with the right leaders. And then when you think about, those, the Magnificent Eight, or Brother Walker, what you were talking about, I think about the 60s and the 50s and how young and prolific those leaders were. They were consistent voices always, standing up, and I feel like we're missing that. I feel like we're missing those voices, those consistent voices, the face of civil rights, or the face of particular movements that we don't really know who to listen to and which direction to go. So, I mean, that kind of resonated with me when you said that, and wanted to offer that perspective.
I think that's an excellent analogy of eating the elephant one bite at a time, because sometimes we try to accomplish too much. So how do we marshal our efforts? And we forget that Dr. King was a relatively young man at the height of his success. So young people need to be mindful that they oftentimes have more power than they realize. Okay, other responses?
I would like to say, in relation to what Stacy just said, is that, and what you just said, Mr. Walker, is that alignment is key, right? And so I think where we often miss the mark, especially here locally, and of course globally, is that back in the, I don't want to say back in the day, but during Dr. King's time and their time, that time after, there was some alignment there. There was an agenda for the community, not necessarily what you were doing in your silo or what you were doing for yourself or what you were doing for your particular organization, but it was what was going to be best for the common good of the African American community. And I think we have to get back to that, and we have to align with one another and have an agenda. Like, what is it that we're wanting to do for our community? Because when we realize what we do for our community, let me say this, when we realize what we do for the common good of our community, everyone benefits. And I say this all the time. And so you have to be able to, we have to be able to align. We have to come together as leaders. We have to have an agenda. And then we do, from that agenda, as Stacy said, eat that elephant bit by bit, piece by piece. And it does take time. I mean, an elephant is huge, right? You can't, even with a meal, you don't just take your plate and swallow everything at one time. You eat it morsel by morsel. And we didn't develop or get into this situation overnight, and so we can't solve it overnight. But I do think the key piece is alignment. I also would like to say, I think a key piece in addressing a lot of these issues is just to quit talking about it and be about it. Like, just do it. And know that what you're doing is aligned with what you're supposed to be doing. Like, I'm a big believer in staying in my lane. So I would not be on the school board, or I would not be being a public advocate as I am for public education and social justice and things that are socially right, if that wasn't my lane in this capacity. Let me say that. So if I know that I shouldn't be where I'm at, I'm not going to be there. I'm going to figure out what my lane is to support the work, but I'm going to not be in a lane that's not my lane. And I think we have to have those conversations as well. But we also have to learn that instead of criticizing those that are in situations and doing the work, to figure out what your piece is in the work. Because everybody, it's like a puzzle, everybody in our community has a piece of work to do. And if we start to do all of that, I think we will see a change as well. But we do have to realize that we all have a piece of the work. We are all obligated to do our piece of the work. And no, it's not comfortable a lot of days. It's not. But going back to the quote that we talked about, that you shared when we talked about standing in the measures of comfort, everything that I do on a daily basis is uncomfortable for me. Nothing that I do is comfortable, other than being a wife and a mommy. I mean, I love that. But even some of that sometimes is uncomfortable because it's uncharted territory every day. But the work I do for my service in the public and for my community, every day is uncomfortable. I've yet in 8 years to have a comfortable moment in my role. Period. And so I'm okay with that because I know I'm where I'm supposed to be. But I'm also okay with that because I know I'm aligned with my piece of the work. And so I don't get out of my lane. I just stay uncomfortable where I'm at and let somebody else be uncomfortable where they're at, and know that we're going to meet and understand each other and are able to support each other. So I know that was kind of elongated, but I want to make sure that people understand. People like, oh, I don't have that to do, or I don't have no, everybody has a piece and everybody has a voice. And if we're all trumpets, like Pastor Wilson said, then imagine how loud that, I mean, we could be louder than the Southern Band, FAMU. I mean, like, imagine the volume that we could have in speaking up for our community.
And a lot of what you say reminds me of some of the principles of Kwanzaa. It talks about community and looking at the collective good, everybody playing their part. And some of us that have been involved in sports might be familiar with the no pain, no gain concept. So you got to get out of your comfort zones, but it's also important, as you say, to know where your lane is and stay in it. And over time, a lot of things can be accomplished. So thank you. Okay.
Hey, Brother Walker, I would say it is probably no coincidence that everyone on this call is connected to education in some way. And folks are probably not going to be very surprised at all that I think education is really the remedy to what we need to do to place ourselves in a situation to change. If you really think about it, education is really connected to resolving so many different disparities in healthcare, disparities in poverty, disparities in homelessness. And so it is connected in so many different ways that we have an imperative to ensure that our young folks have access to education in such a way. I mean, think about it. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
The common theme of education was not coincidental, brother.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That was intentional.
Absolutely.
Because that is so critical. As I think about our Go to High School, Go to College program, our YMOD mentoring program, some of the activities that have been going on that some of you have been involved in, education is so critical. So how do we promote that? How do we get more people involved? You know, Brother Wilson has served on the school board, and Ms. Jones is currently serving. Ms. Lightfoot has been involved in education. You've been involved in education. So how do we promote that as a community?
I'll personally say, I think we have a responsibility as leaders within this community to ensure that our young people have access in a way that is fair and equitable. I mean, I know it is the job that the other panelists have done for a number of years, because I followed your careers, and I know that it is absolutely the imperative for us. And so we have to make sure that we are doing it. And then I think we do it and make our business and community, our business and industry folks, our corporate folks, responsible for helping us to connect them to opportunities outside of higher ed as well. So gosh, I really do believe that we are here for an appointed time and at this appointed place for this appointed reason to do this appointed work.
Okay.
I think that, I think accountability, I'm just thinking through, we need to hold not only the powers that be, but our own community. I guess I'm being biblical, just coming off Sunday morning, still sort of sermonic. Now think about the narrative of the 12 spies who had a mission and a function and a goal and agenda to go and scout the land. And then their obligation was to come back and to report to those who had not been privy to go to the other side what it was like. And I think where we are failing, if you would, in the African-American context is either A, we're going over to the other side and we're not coming back. In other words, we're forgetting where we came from. We disappearing. We waiting for brother so-and-so to come back and help young brother, and we hadn't seen him because he's moved to the suburbs and forgotten his community. Or we're coming back, if you know the biblical narrative, some of them came back and they gave erroneous, if you would, support, or not positive support. So, we've got to really hold each other accountable in terms of that. And again, Brother Walker, my metaphors are the same this morning. I spoke to some children last week, and I talked about when I was a little boy, my grandmother had a pressure cooker. And I talked about the difference between the pressure cooker and the crock pot. And that sometimes a crock pot is okay, you can cook slow all day. But a pressure cooker, you had to be careful. But it would cook it quick, but if you touch those handles the wrong way and you didn't lock it, it would blow something up in your face. And again, I go back to the point now where we are, we have gotten comfortable, some of us, and we are operating as a crock pot, and we need to put the pressure where it needs to be applied. and we need to challenge systems. You know, I'm for individual accountability. I think that too much focus in terms of how change is addressed is on mandating or encouraging the individual, challenging it, and then looking at the individual. Well, that student didn't fail because he didn't want it or she didn't want to do better, when in fact, the structures and the systems are what I heard a quote, and I'll end, wasn't a quote, it was a story. You all know, what was it, last year ago when the ship was stuck down in the Suez Canal, Panama Canal, and they said they sent workers down to help dislodge the ship. And it's okay to have workers on the ground, but I read something very powerful. It said what really ultimately helped that ship get out from up under being stuck in that canal was the movement of the moon. It took a gravitational force. It took a higher force in order to dislodge that ship. And that is where systems come in. There are things that individuals need to do to empower themselves. There are choices that individuals need to make. But you're going to hear my voice say that in doing that, we need systemic change from we're talking about education, from kindergarten all the way through higher education. We need to address head on systems that make it difficult for Black, brown, and poor children, for that matter, socioeconomic distress, to navigate and to succeed in achieving those systems. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
To
Go
add
ahead,
to
Ms.
that,
Jones.
really quickly, when Pastor Wilson talked about the systems, and he said K through post-secondary, I would go a little bit further than that. I would say, for me, people know I'm a very big proponent of early learning. And I would say we have to ensure that children are prepared from utero all the way through, because what we do know here in our county, and I'm going to speak a little locally, when you look at the data here in our county, here in Hamilton County, and here in the city of Chattanooga, we have some of the highest rates in our inner city and our predominantly African-American, Black and brown communities of infant mortality, maternal mortality, lack of appropriate access to care for Black maternal health. And what does that look like? So if you don't even have a fair chance or a fair start in the womb, what does that look like for you when you get to, we talk about, well, kindergarten, well, if they, from birth, they didn't have a fair chance. And I will say we have to make note of what that looks like. And when I talk about Black maternal health, when you look at the numbers for that doesn't affect our mothers and our families with low socioeconomic background. That affects women like myself and Ms. Lightfoot. The middle class educated Black woman is at risk for not having the appropriate access for Black maternal health. So if we wouldn't have it being educated with multiple degrees and certifications, what does that look like for a mom that doesn't have a high school diploma? And so we have to think about the access there and making sure that our children have a fresh start from birth and even developing in the womb, so that they can be ready for kindergarten, so they can be on target by 2nd and 3rd grade, so they can be ready to matriculate from 8th grade to 9th grade, and they will be able for whatever their post-secondary options are, and making sure that they know. And going back to something else that I think it was Mr. Freeman and Pastor Wilson stated about the community piece, like just because your kid isn't in public education or whatever, it doesn't mean that you don't have a buy-in to what is going on in the realm of public education. We are all taxpayers. We are all, and I know for myself as a homeowner and as a small business owner, I pay city, county, state, and federal taxes. And so whether my child's not even in school at this point because he's 2, but I have a buy-in. My money goes into this system. And so even if I elect to pay, if I was a parent who elected to pay for schooling in another realm or resource, I still pay into the public school system. And so I have an opinion there, and I should care about what's going on with my tax dollars. And if children looking like me are not getting what they need, and from that aspect. And so we do have to do our part, and we do have to be vocal about that, but we have to make sure that children are being educated and having the resources they need from the womb up. One thing my parents always told me was, what's in your head, no one can ever take from you. And so if we give them what they need and equip them and make sure that they have the resources in their brains, no one can take that from you unless they take your brain. No one can ever take that from you. And so I think that's a big piece that we have to make sure our children understand from small children up, to engulf them in knowledge and wisdom and intellect, so that what is in them, no one can ever persuade them is wrong, because they know that, and make sure that they're learning the right things, or they're going to grow up like some of us and have to unlearn some of that. But in the same aspect, making sure that they're learning the right things to empower them and equip them to be successful adults later in life.
Brother Walker, can I dovetail off of something that Karitsa said? And I think it's important. I don't want us to lose it. You brought up this point, Karitsa, that like even with all this education, because we're Black and women of color, we are still disparaged in, in some kind of way. And you all know I am a proponent of education, of higher education. It was the equalizer for me. Being exposed at such a young age and being around so many phenomenal role models and mentors. So we've all stated that access to education really lays the foundation for everything that happens in a person's life, but understanding and recognizing the system and the systemic oppression and the systemic racism that has affected so much of what we have. And how much harder it is for us to really move forward and continue to break those barriers, whether it's home ownership, whether it's health, whether it's education. I think it's should not be understated here, and wanted to just call to light just the challenges, even when you are provided access to education. Black Americans with white sounding names, right, still receive 50% more callbacks from their job application. Like Black people who have college degrees are still twice as likely to be unemployed. The wealth of Black college grads is tremendously lower than that of white college grads. And so it's hard to have this conversation without talking about how race plays into it. And not that racism is going away, but it's how do you teach and how do you motivate and continue to encourage, although we are motivating students to get educations and get good jobs, what they will still be faced with because they are Black. Just like, Karitsa and I have these degrees, but, I delivered my child almost 3 months early. And so it doesn't fall on deaf ears for me that there's still so many hurdles that we have to overcome because we're Black. And it's, how do you shed light on that conversation? How do you get the data and the information out to those who can, use their power and influence to really help and accelerate really, really good work.
But Brother Walker, we had, if I can quickly, I'm on Memorial's board. We have so we just started a committee like equity, everything's now around equity, and all of brother Dr. Freeman's, Yancy Freeman's point, all these issues intersect. And I always told people that from the school board to the hospital board, if you didn't know any different, you think you're in the same meeting. Your zip code affect all of it. And so to Ms. Lightfoot's point, we had this it wasn't long, but we had a good session this past weekend, all day. We had a lady from Rhodes College, professor, deal with health equity, and just very, very good session. But one of the things that jumped out to the point that both these ladies are making, and I raised my hand and I said this, because I was the only African-American male, I will be 57 this year. I have health care, I've got degrees, my wife is a physician, I'm hypochondriac. I call my doctor 3, 4 times, like, there's nothing wrong with you. I live in the darn doctor's office now. I'm the person to go. I'm gonna call him probably when we get off. I just call him every day. He's like, stop calling me. You okay? But just very cognizant of health and anything, and coughing and sneeze. But the point is that the data shows that in spite of all of that, healthcare and transportation racism, I have a car, I can get to the doctor. I don't have to worry about that. I have insurance and co-pays, and the data shows, and I made this point, that my neighbor, I've got a neighbor who's about my age, he's out cycling and riding. he will outlive me according to the data. I'm not a big drinker. I don't smoke. You try to maintain your weight. I exercise, but nevertheless, the data shows. Now we talk about early, the prenatal birth, Ms. Mosley. It shows that that person will outlive me because my life expectancy as a Black man is shorter. And those are conversations. And I've submitted that a lot of it, in my humble opinion, is stress. And that's the racism. It is because every single day for the last 57 years almost, I have had to, on some level, deal with this notion directly or indirectly of what is the intersectionality between race and maybe not getting this job or not getting that job or getting it. And then, being a slightly older parent, I've got a 13, almost 14. He is as tall as me. I'm happy for him, but he will drive in 2 years. And now we've got to have an entirely different set of conversations and a different set of stress that comes with him leaving the house. And so to be Black in America, from the cradle to the grave. And I think Dr. King wants us to talk about what this means. And to your point, what we can do, how we can educate our community, as well as those who are in other communities. I always use the biblical narrative, Rahab, there was a Rahab over there who was willing to help. There are people in other communities who are willing to help, but they don't always know how to help. So I think we have to continue those conversations, those hard conversations, but we got to lay it all out. Because again, if you are Black, from the time you are born, you have adversity. And if you live long enough, I don't care how many degrees, the old people say you can have more degrees than a thermometer. The data shows that if you are African American, you will not live as long than your Caucasian counterpart with or without health care. And we need to continue to have all those conversations. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, Brother Bo, can I add just one point?
Sure.
And I know we're getting to the top of the hour, and I will just say that I am just, this is so compelling for me. This conversation is so compelling for me in a lot of ways because of my position with the university and the opportunities I've had to even sit at the table to talk about strategy and vision and mission and what we'll do to incorporate individuals into our university, to provide access and opportunity for students that are on campus. The time is now to not be silent. I mean, we have to take a stand and talk about and not allow others to dismiss the experience, right? When all of the case originally happened with George Floyd, we had some, just some very heartfelt conversations at our institution about what that means and what it means to the Black experience and for our students. And I remember having an opportunity to share with them what my life is like as a Black man. Now, most of them see me and they say, oh, Dr. Freeman, he is vice chancellor or whatever. And so he has this position and that kind of thing, but it still does not change what happens when I am away from the institution and the experience of what happens when I am driving, or the conversation I've had to have with my son and my daughter about how you behave when, or what you do in a situation where you are stopped by the police. And so it is something that we have to continue to share. As leaders in the community, we've got to make sure that we are sharing it, we're talking about it, and allowing folks to understand the experience of what's there.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think all of you made some excellent points. And since so many of our problems and injustices are systemic, we must take a systemic approach to dealing with it. And so I'd like to encourage you to think about that. And as we get to the end of our time, I would like for you to think about what would you think is one takeaway that you want to recommend, and what's a challenge that you have for us to encourage us to move in a systemic way to do that. So we'll allow each one of you to identify what would you see as one takeaway, what would your recommendation be, and what is your challenge to us? So I'll let you volunteer to go first.
No, I'll start. This morning I was on the steps of City Hall for the MLK Day of Service. And UTC partnered with the city and the organizations that are benefiting from the drive that ends at 11:30. So if you all are out, make sure you you go by City Hall and make some donations to a variety of organizations. But what I said as I stood on those steps is like UTC wants to be the city's best partner. So I can't help but think of like partnerships and collaborations. And the only way that we're going to be able to do this, to steal from you, Karitsa, is aligning with people who know where their lane is. Like there are some things, believe it or not, that Yancy and I can't say and can't do because we work for a state organization. I mean, it doesn't mean I don't believe it, but I need people. I would want people on the team or on my team to be able to say things that I can't say and do things that I can't do. And then on the flip side, there are things that Yancy and I may be able to do as a state institution or as a higher, as an institution of higher education that we'd be able to do that we could offer to a collective or collaborative. So it's really building that collaborative. If that's my takeaway from today is how do we get everybody together? How do we galvanize all of these willing and passionate and smart and dedicated people to get something done? And what is that thing going to be, right? Like, and it's identifying what that thing is going to be. It's identifying that common agenda that Ms. Jones alluded to earlier today. So that's my takeaway. If I want everyone to know that UTC wants to be the best partner for so many organizations in the city to get something done, whether it's graduate more Black and brown students, whether it's partnering with Hamilton County schools and other entities in this community, so more students have access to quality and high quality education. That's what I'm committed to. So that's my takeaway, is like making sure I call up my pastor, Jeffrey Wilson, make sure I'm meeting with Yancy on a consistent basis. Karitsa, you and I don't talk as much as we probably should, right? As a Black woman on the school board. Like, I mean, there's so much magic that we can create if we all just take the time and think about ways to galvanize and harness all of this wonderful talent and passion to get something done.
I'll go next.
I'll go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead, Dr. Yancy. No, go ahead, Dr. Freeman.
No, I was just going to say, 45 seconds here, two things I'll add. I think Dr. Wilson so illustriously pointed this out, and one that I would challenge folks to do for individuals who are serving on boards. He mentioned his work with Memorial. For individuals who are serving on boards, continue to push this issue about equity. It ought to be part of their strategic plan, their mission, their vision. Everywhere you look, we ought to be talking about it. That's how you begin to change. And then the second challenge I'll make, and I will let Mosley Jones go, it is, I work with young folks, I said that earlier. Gosh, take one in and work with them. If it were not for one of my mentors, Mr. Julius Dodds, I would not be where I am today. And so I am always thankful for what Julius did for me as an undergraduate student at UTC, working with me and challenging me and helping me to become a better me. I wouldn't be where I am today. And so I am always thankful for him. We have a responsibility to do the same thing for someone. So let's make sure we're doing that.
Okay, thank you.
So one takeaway I would like to say, and Stacy has already discussed this, but I'll continue to preach this, is community alignment. We have to align as a community. We can't wait for others to get us where we need to be. We have to do that for ourselves. So that's my one biggest takeaway, is to do the work. We need to align with one another because we have to be the change that we seek. One of my most favorite quotes is by Gandhi, and it talks about being the change that you seek. You have to, if you want to see something, then you have to begin that situation. And one of the challenges I have to our community is to have be willing and open enough to have courageous conversations, and know that while we have are standing on the shoulders of people like Dr. King, or even Mr. John Franklin here in our city, and so many others, Mr. Mapp, so many others, we're standing on their shoulders. We have an obligation and accountability to ensure that the work they have done was not in vain, and that we continue that work. But we have to be willing to have courageous conversations, and we have to be able to be willing to influence or encourage our allies that don't look like us. If you believe what we believe, be willing to get uncomfortable with us in the work. Because we sit at a lot of tables where we're the only ones, right? We're the only ones that look like us. And we have people that sit at that table with us and say, yeah, I believe what you believe. Yeah, but be willing to get uncomfortable with us and do the work. And alongside that, know that we have work to do. I think one of the biggest issues that we have here in our community is that we feel like we've arrived. We have not arrived. And I think the pandemic has showed us that. I think that the last 4 years of our federal administration has shown us that we have work to do. And so figure out what your purpose is and get uncomfortable with your community, have a courageous conversation, and be the change that you seek.
Thank you.
African Americans, I always say I read books. My wife said, you don't really read them, you never finish any, so they doesn't count. I scan books. But the Wilkerson in the book Caste, C-A-S-T-E, The Origin of Our Discontent, powerful book. And she talked about these manufactured rivalries, creating rivalries that are not rivalries, and how large systems, the way that they maintain power is that they create division. And we see it, everybody this panel, we in these, we're in our clubs, sororities, fraternities, this one versus that one, with all of us in the same boat at the end of the day. And so we've got to get away from all of this infighting, creating caste division as though we better. Ms. Mosley, just at the end of the day, we all in the same place. We've given statistics about early childhood, prenatal, end of life, don't care how many degrees, what fraternity you in, the data shows if you Black, you leaving earlier. So we've got to get away from those manufactured rivalries in the Black community. Our Caucasian brothers and sisters who are supportive, they got to be willing to talk to their peers. It's okay to talk to me. But I challenge people. I'm not in the circles you in. You got to have those conversations in your house and with your friends who are in position to hire people, but turn down these applications or flip them back over. So, I just think, as they say, we said, it just take one person doing his or her part. We don't need a flute. We need a trumpet. And crock pot time is over. Okay, we need a pressure cooker. We need to turn up the pressure. Because again, the issues are the issues, and our children, Dr. Freeman said it, we're here for an appointed time. And I want to make sure that when my time is up, I have done what I'm supposed to do, and I've tried to help somebody on this journey. As King said, then my living has not been in vain. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Again, I want to thank each one of you for your participation and your insight and your input. This is the beginning. We got a lot of work to do, and so we'll be following up with you to keep this ball rolling. This is our first effort at a virtual meeting. There's so much more that we could do, but we want to be mindful of your time, and there are other things going on today. So on behalf of the Psi Lambda chapter and the Educational Foundation, we want to thank you for your participation. We want to thank all of the people that participated. We regret not having the opportunity to have question and answers, but that would have extended our time, and this was a trial effort on our part. But thank you, panelists, for your participation. Enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your year, but we really are thankful for your contribution to our program today. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you. Good meeting.
Thank you.